Hello and welcome to Ops Up Inside Your Head, the conversation for ops leaders who want to focus on their habits to make their operations amazing. We meet amazing guests from around the world of operations that have been there, done that, and built the habits. These conversations are about unlocking what makes them truly brilliant. And today we get to welcome the brilliant Michelle Johnson. Hello, Michelle.
Hi, Michael. Thanks for having me.
Welcome to Ops Up Inside Your Head. These conversations are all about the leaders and their habits that make them. So could you, before we get into the world of habits, could you give us a little bit of intro of who you are and sort of where you've come from?
Absolutely. So I have an international career. I'm Canadian, born in Canada and spent my, formative career years there delivering projects internationally throughout Canada and North America. Initially in a little bit of a niche, which was livestock operations, and then in the world of enterprise resource planning. Canada's big, US is big. Most of what I was doing was in person, but a lot of the support, a lot of the pre-work and things like that was done remotely, just for the reasons that you can't, pop down to Nebraska if somebody has a problem with what they're doing. You have to be able to diagnose, deal with their issues from a remote computer, and that's back in the days before we had really good Zoom links. Anything better than that. That's Y2K can get brought into that. So that tells you about the time I was doing those bits of work in North America. After that, I moved to the Middle East and spent my time moving to credit card payments and spent my time setting up a branch of an international company in Dubai. And then again, building teams out, working with head office and its other branches globally, and also delivering projects throughout the GCC, Africa, and the Indian subcontinent. Again, so really had a lot of experience doing international, cross-cultural, collaborative efforts and project delivery, and learned a lot there. And now have ended up in the UK, England specifically. I'm living in a field in the Cotswolds in a converted barn, and also continued with my work with international businesses, working with an Irish company, taking care of their operations in the UK and Ireland, in conjunction with Europe, and then took a leap and moved to work for a Australian UK company as their global head of operations. And again, worked cross-culturally to make teams functions and make operations shine.
Amazing. That is a global set of experience, and actually that's why you're here today, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted you as a guest, because we've done lots of very localized operations, but this is the ops at a global scale. So I'm really excited to talk to you today and find out more about the habits that you have, but also what you've seen in teams and businesses that you have met on your journey. So what does ops leadership mean to you?
My background, my first start was as a project manager. And I'm going to take one of the axioms of project management and apply it to operations. And that is that project management is 90% communications. And I would say that good operations are also 90% communications, and underpinned by really good processes and the systems that support them. But if you're not communicating correctly and deliberately and consciously, especially when you're working at a remove, you're not going to be able to operate efficiently because you don't know where your teams are at, you don't know the struggles that they're having, you don't know what's working, what isn't working, and that goes when you're speaking to operations teams, and more importantly, when you're speaking with your customers and your suppliers.
Yeah. Now, I can imagine actually that communications piece has probably changed the most in the last 5-10 years, probably, in terms of how you can communicate faster, more accurately, and in more context. Like we mentioned before this call, a Zoom link can give you so much in terms of what you can see on the other side of what's going on where someone is.
It's really interesting. Back when I was in North America, WebEx had just come out, and we started using that. We were very cutting edge, started using that when I was delivering ERP as their information systems manager for a 100 million Canadian company that had operations throughout Canada. And we thought we were very, very cutting edge with WebEx because we could see people's faces. Before that, it was still, traditional. You would be on a phone, you would have a headset, and nobody could show you what was going wrong. They had to describe it. And I think because you couldn't see what was going on, I could still dial in with the old modems using Unix connections and do my research that way. But if you're dealing with physical issues, so printers not working or things along those lines, there's no such thing as turning a camera around and saying, well, let's see what's happening there, or send in a short video clip or things along those lines. So it was harder in that respect because but it was better from a communication perspective, because to be effective and understand what was going on, you had to ask better questions.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I see that. So actually, it relied more on people being able to articulate what the issue was. So those were the people that came to the top in these positions, because if you couldn't articulate it, you weren't going to progress, were you? So
no, and you couldn't necessarily make assumptions because you would be working. Let's take that printer issue, or let's take a monitor issue or something. Even with softwares, you would be taking people who are potentially non-technical and having them expose kind of technical issues to you. So, it might be an issue with a connector that was built properly, or in one case, this one was pretty easy to diagnose. There was mice in the printer chewing through the wires. That was, there wasn't much technical in there. There's mice in the printers. But if there was something really non-mouse related or something along those lines, it's harder to diagnose what's going on. Yeah.
But yeah, and I can imagine that wasn't on your diagnosis set of questions. Is there a mouse? Are there any rodents in the hardware?
You would be amazed how the checklist grew, because you would also get things like radio frequency interference. So in the winter, if somebody said that this wasn't working or their monitor was blinking, you would ask, well, do you have a heater next to your thing? And suddenly that answer. And so, that's the iterative approach, is as you've learned something that's going wrong in business as usual, you put it into your knowledge base, you put it into your list, and you grow out there. Yeah. So, mice in the computer might be at the end of the list, but they're certainly it certainly should be on there once you've exhausted anything else.
Absolutely. And it always, when you get things like that, it's always a nice chuckle for a resolution that's something simple as there's a radiator or there's a mouse that are causing a problem.
Exactly. And they should be checked.
Yeah, should be checked. Cool. Okay, brilliant. We've hit not a tangent already, but I always try to talk about the person before we go into the challenges, and we've gone into a bit of the challenges. So can we come back a little bit and talk about you? So
yeah,
what do you do to keep you fresh? What is your routine? How does Michelle turn up?
I'm pretty deliberate with what I do and the choices that I make, and that probably stems from the project manager in me. My husband complained when I put our wedding on a Gantt chart, but it rolled off without a hitch. So I do have that. Without a hitch. It was seamless, and it was organized in very, very quickly. We got married about 6 months after we met, so there was some time considerations when delivering that particular project, and that did impact the budget and scope, but we did get it done. So I'm deliberate. I'm possibly not as spontaneous as I could be, but what I do is I approach my week with very, very deliberately. So every Sunday night or Sunday afternoon, I will sit down and take a look at what the week is ahead, and make sure that the habits or the things that I need to do professionally are on my calendar, and the things that I need to do personally are on my calendar as well. So I want to make sure that my gym sessions are in there. I want to make sure that I've got time set aside to go to the yoga, to do some mentoring. My husband works a non-standard work week. He works a 10-day cycle, and he's a shift worker. So that means that we're not guaranteed to have weekends or evenings together. So I'm very deliberate, such that when I know that he and I are free, that I've got that time with him, and just, remind him who we are, and actually spend that time together instead of having something else scheduled. So I'm careful to do that. And that's done on a Sunday afternoon. I have my list of things, of must-dos, personally and professionally. I make sure that those are scheduled in. Then every day, I end each day by preparing for the next. I review what I want to do, what I'm doing the next day in terms of appointments and personal prep, if there's any travel, things along those lines. Make sure that I can fit things in, shugle them around with necessary, and let's make sure I'm set up for the next day. Other habits I like to do on a weekly basis, I like to sit down on Saturday, and I write a journal, and it's a stream of thought journal on what's happened in the week. I do use some journaling prompts. I'm signed up to 365 coaching prompts a year, thinking prompts a year, and I sometimes use those as a little bit of a writing prompt to just sit down for half an hour and just get stuff on paper. Don't really know if there's any kind of quantifiable impact on that, but I do it because it feels good. Also, weekly, at same time, I'll put my journal down, and then I will do some structured business reading. So I'll read The Economist, which comes weekly. I'll take a look at the Harvard Business Review. I'll take a look at whatever business book is on my thing. And that, to be fair, is probably the only time I do that really, really structured, focused business reading. During the week, I'll read fiction. And I think that's important because it teaches people how to emphasize. And there's some fabulous stories out there. You'll take my Kindle out of my cold dead hands. It's probably my favorite piece of technology. There's over 1,000 books on there, and I don't put business books on there. That's all fiction. Yeah.
No. It's important to have that counter, isn't it? If you do have such a planned business day, like it sounds like you do, actually, what is your non-business thinking to allow your brain to relax?
A few things that I do. I have a dog who knows what time it is, and I have a dog who knows, same dog, really understands whether he's been walked or not. And he will come get me, and we will go for a walk. And that walk's done without headphones. It's disconnecting from everything. It's outside, usually in the fields and things along those lines, so I can see. Like I said, I live in a converted barn in the middle of the field, so we're surrounded by that. So I get to go out and see what deer are out there, and what the local red kites are doing, and the buzzards that live on the tree on my driveway are doing, and just keep a general eye out just to see what's going on, and watch the changing of the season. Right now, the hedges are filled with brambles, so dog walks take longer. So because we stop to eat the brambles, both me and my dog, and it's fantastic.
Nice.
We're coming up to muddy season, so it's going to get a little bit dirtier and a little bit longer because we need to hose both of us off after once we get back from the walk. But it's still a complete disconnect from work. Yeah.
They sound like such a nice way just to not be thinking about work as well. Like, sounds like exactly, like, right, the walk is about me. It's about disconnecting. Mm-hmm. It's about actually being with the dog as well. Like, it sounds like you and the dog are having a great time together.
Yeah, having a fantastic time. I'm watching him chase hares. So far, I think it's probably hares 300, dog 0. He is never going to catch one in his life, but that's not going to stop him from trying. And it's me. Now, ironically, because my brain is shut off from business, sometimes the best ideas come up naturally from it. And that's good, but I'm not going to go out and, I will take a walk if my brain's too full, because it just cuts it away. I'm a big fan of flow state, and this is probably my time not to be in any kind of deliberate flow state. It's just, let's go out for a walk and look at the birds, watch the dog, feel the rain this winter, I'm sure.
Cool. And that flow state, is that a flow state at work? So you're in like you are working, you're being productive?
Mm-hmm. I like to structure deep work in the morning, so I like to have 2 hours set aside in the morning to focus on high impact work, on writing work and strategies, on creating proposals, things along those lines. I use an app called Balance for that. Fantastic app. I'm going to plug it. I get no money from this, but it is, I think the first year is free, and it offers instruction on structured meditation. It offers instruction on things like anxiety. It's got a lot of functionality to it. What I really probably I use, or maybe even overuse with it, is its Pomodoro timer. That's accompanied by flow music. So it will get you into kind of a deep state of music while still managing your time. And that's the kind of thing where you look down working on something and then you look up 25 minutes later because it's gone bing, and it doesn't feel like 25 minutes have gone away and you've been incredibly productive. So I love that app, and I probably overuse it. So that's a free plug for that.
No, amazing.
Yeah.
A question though on the Pomodoro timer. So are you able to take those breaks?
Yes.
When it's take a break?
When it's take a break, most of the time I can take the break. If I know I'm not going to take the break, the nice thing about balance is that it will consciously interrupt you and force you to do something different, because somebody will start talking to you during those 5 minutes. And it's tough to ignore that person who you've programmed who's saying, okay, we'll have a stretch and get up and go grab a glass of water or something like that. So that's, otherwise it is, you sound like a man who sometimes can't take a break in a Pomodoro, and I hear you.
Yeah, no, like it is. It's the counterintuitive. I'm a big Pomodoro fan, and I like the background music as well. So it's just of my own creation with Spotify, and I have an extension for it. And I sometimes find the challenge of there's something you just want to get done, but it takes you into the second phase of the Pomodoro. But then you get to the end of the second phase, and you don't have that freshness, and you've actually not done yourself any favors by working through. And the challenge is stopping, trusting the process.
Yeah, absolutely. I think those breaks are essential. You've got to trust that process. You've got to step away and take that break and then come back to it and realize that you'll be able to sink back in. But it's tough. Yeah.
And in those breaks, you're doing things that are restorative? So the meditation, the stretching. It's not check your phone and social media stuff.
Sometimes it's check my phone and let's go for a doom scroll. Let's not get away from that. I'm not a perfect person. Sometimes we're just going to go down the Twitter hole and see what's going on in the world and see what's happening, or get caught by Instagram.
I retired my Twitter account about 18 months ago. It was the vibes were wrong for me, and it's by all accounts, from what I've heard, it's become a bit more of a darker. It's a bit.
It has. I've made a conscious. No, I don't actually post on Twitter all that often. I just use it for doom scrolling, like I said. But I think it's important to be there, because you've got somebody who's a big proponent of free speech, and yet and I'm speaking about Musk here. He's using his influence to really moderate what's on Twitter. I'm not going to call it X. You can leave and make it even more of an echo chamber where this free speech is what Elon Musk wants to have, or you can stay and say contrary things, or say what you want to do, or exercise your own right to free speech, because otherwise it's just going to become a bigger echo chamber. Maybe there's not a lot of logic in there, but
I see that logic. I see that logic.
You need a dissenting opinion if your speech is going to be free. And so in some ways, even though I'm being contrary by not really posting, well, sometimes I do, I repost dissenting opinions. But if you want a truly free platform with free speech, like Musk is trying to claim, at least that he's doing, you need to have that dissenting voice. Your voice is in there.
I may go back at some point, but it's for me the energy was not right. But I can see how actually what you're saying is it's important to be there. I'm going to be there because I'm not going to be pushed out as well, and you have to have all those voices in the room. Otherwise, it is not a great place. Okay,
it is. Look, and you can see that elsewhere. I think Talk Social, Donald Trump's platform, is probably a huge echo chamber and dumpster fire, really. And I'm not going there to be a dissenting voice. I'm going to pick my battles. Yeah.
Awesome. I love it.
Yeah.
Okay, and I've got in my head. I've got a nice, real clear picture of your plans, you know when you need to work, you know how to show up, you know how to get yourself ready to show up, but also you know how to relax.
Yeah, I do. It's not just dog walks. I go choir singing. I like to play the piano. Again, that probably speaks to that flow state I love, because when you're singing and playing music, there's not much else you can think about. Another thing that I do to relax, that's probably a bit unusual for people, is I shoot clay pigeons competitively. And that's another, I guess, results-oriented thing that's based on score and based on being in the moment. And you can't, again, like singing in a choir, it's probably the weirdest things to compare, shooting clay pigeons and English madrigals, but there's a commonality between them because that's what you're there to do. You're that, yeah.
Yeah, I love it. I love that focus. So before we go off into the world of teams and businesses, a couple more things.
Yeah.
What's the habit you're thinking about creating right now? What's the one you're trying to sharpen up?
Habit I'm thinking of creating just actually works around community. One of the reasons that we chose to leave the UAE is if you're not an Emirati, if it's not the country, and some of the people who have been born and stayed there, but if you're not there with a Emirati passport, many of the people who live there are transition. They just transition through it. They're going to go there for the money. And it's really, really difficult to have a sense of community there, because the people that you build strong friendships with leave and move on to the next thing. Both my husband and I are from small towns. I'm from small town Canada. He's from small town Scotland, and we really miss that. And so we live really, really close to a small village. It's about 400 people. It's the kind of place where everybody knows what everybody's up to, and we're close enough to it that we're part of the village group, but we're far enough away from it that we're not in the full cycle of the weekly village soap opera, which is nice. One of the habits that I'm trying to build goes with that Stretton, or that sense of community in the village. And I'm getting more involved in community activities with the local group that's kind of grown organically around fitness. So we've started going for walks every Tuesday and Friday through the fields, and for distance walks. We've suddenly somehow picked up doing a park run every Saturday. This is a little bit insane, but we all, with very, very little training, went out and did the Wolf Run, which is a 10-kilometer Tough Mudder obstacle course on Sunday. Yeah. And I'm really wearing long sleeves right now because I'm absolutely battered and bruised from it.
I've wolf runned, and that is no easy task to get through one of those.
No, it was a good group, and now it seems that this kind of organic growing has happened. We were talking about it last night, that we do want to possibly set up a committee and just really structure this a little bit further. And that's the habit that I'm really trying to do, is to go out and do things with other people. I'm an introvert. I like to sit around with, as I've described, like my dog and my books and my field, and doing kind of solo activities. I want to have habits that involve being around other humans a bit more, and doing this with the community is brilliant.
Oh, I love that. I love that, searching for that very local connection, but where you live work in such a global world. I love that.
Yeah, no, it's really good. It's it's fantastic. It's nice to have that tiny little community. One of the biggest wins that we had lately was at the local village show. This probably also speaks to my focus on incremental effort, building long-time change. 2 years ago, my dog, who is admittedly a complete clown, was disqualified completely from the village dog show of, I think, probably 20 dogs for manners. So we've been, and the manners I'm speaking of is that the judge really didn't appreciate being kissed on the lips whenever he had the opportunity to do so. So he was kicked out. Of course, the entire village knows this. The entire village knows me, knows my dog. And 3 weeks ago, my dog actually, at the most recent village show, won the second place in the most obedient dog category.
Oh, wow.
Which speaks to the 2 years of training that we've put in, and just his general ability to mature and not be so excited around people these days. Nice. He was a COVID puppy, but that's the work that's been done, and that's something that we're very, very pleased with. It's still faced with a certain amount of disbelief in the village. I personally was shocked as well because I put him into Most Obedient Dog as the comedy entry. But there you go.
Amazing. Love it. I love that achievement. Achievement where you weren't expecting it. Brilliant. One more question. So what is the habit that you're trying to retire right now?
What is the habit that I'm trying to retire? I think I've touched on it already. It's that habit of just being too introverted and not being around other people.
Okay.
Yeah, it's reaching out to that community and we'll pause that there so we don't have the noise. Yeah. Sorry. I think the habit that I'm trying to retire, Michael, is just around doing everything myself and being that introvert and going into community at the same time. So I did touch on that earlier. I think it's important to go out and actually talk to humans, as well as going out to touch grass and watch the red kites and see what they're doing.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, I love it. Yeah, I completely feel that. I'm there on the introvert scale, and it's you can get very safe in a routine and things you do, and actually realize that actually you need some people because that's what makes the world go round.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. Talking about people, if we think back into the world business, one of the things I like to ask people to think about is the teams they work with and have come across on their journeys and the habits they see around successful teams. So what habits have you seen around successful teams on your journeys?
Habits with successful teams. We're going to go back to that communication element, but we're also going to bring in a trust element as well. Teams aren't going to be successful without having trust and psychological safety in there. You're going to get effective teams if some of those factors are missing, but you're not going to get really, really high performing teams unless there's trust and psychological safety. So if you've got a team that's underpinned by good processes and rules and things along those lines, people are going to come in and follow those processes and rules and things like that, but they're not going to go above and beyond. They're just going to go in and do their job and click in, click out, and then they're done. If you are working with remote teams and dispersed teams to get things done, my feeling is that element of trust and excellent communication and psychological safety is even more important because you don't know, as we found during COVID when everybody was remote, you don't know what people are going through if you're not seeing them and being able to have that water cooler conversation with them every day. So you need to, again, be deliberate in what you're doing to understand where your team members are at and where they're coming from and what kind of challenges that they're doing. Because if you're just going to show up on a Zoom call to talk about a project or talk about your daily stand-up or things along those lines, you're not going to find out that so-and-so's car is broken down, especially if they're not the type to volunteer it or their mom's sick or things along those lines. So high-performing teams have deliberate communications and outreach behind them.
Yeah. And you're saying that's the basis of actually trust. So people start to trust each other. Is that when you see people actually sharing those personal bits, like this is going on at home?
Yeah.
And they feel safe to share it because sometimes it can.
They feel safe to share it. And they feel safe to say, look, I don't really know what's going on here. Can you please explain this concept to me? Or can you please take a look at this screen and tell me what's going on? Or, look, I'm not great at Excel or spreadsheets. What can you do? Can you show me how to do this in Excel rather than sitting there and trying to figure out something by themselves for hours or hiding that they don't know things? Or things are going on with either a customer or work or whatever that, isn't being managed effectively or efficiently because, they don't have the skills or the knowledge or the ability to resolve those problems.
Nice. And in this dispersed remote world, how do you see people working around that, leading others and sort of working on that mentorship and developing people? When you can't see their process, you can only see an outcome. Do you see anything that's sort of different in terms of developing people and teams?
So you need that personal connection and that trust building. And what you need to be able to do when you're working with these dispersed teams, if you can get there in person, that's great. So if you've got a cross-pollination, so when I was working in the Middle East, we had a policy that all of our new starters went to head office to meet everybody there. We used to send them in their first or second week, so they're onboarding and induction, but they got so overwhelmed with having to learn the product and everything like that, that they didn't remember who they'd met or had any kind of impact or who they would be working with. So we started to send them after they were about 3 or 4 months in and had a grasp on their job, and then they could go over to our head office in Ireland to meet the people that they've been working with and say thank you and what do you like and have a laugh and go out and have a Guinness or two and things along those lines. So that was really, really good to build those have adventures with people that they'd only spoken to on the end of a call. And that's important. If you can't do that, so we couldn't do that during COVID, you sometimes can't do that because of budget. When I was working with an Australian company, you can't send all of the engineers over. It's prohibitive. It's just really not going to work for your expenses. So you would send champions instead who would, kind of bring that Australian culture to the UK. And then we would send people from the UK to Australia to bring that UK culture to Australia. And just pollinate there. And then we would have kind of joint team building events and challenges and deliberately set up things on our Slack channels for asynchronous communication where people could talk about their pets or talk about their passions, their cooking, their cycling, their motorbiking, their, the outdoor hiking that they do and things like that. And you would say, okay, well, Bill down in Melbourne also likes to go hiking. So let's bond over that and have a chat. And so that is, again, a deliberate way to build connections with people that isn't going to happen in a serendipitous style at a water cooler because they're not at that same water cooler.
Yeah.
That's
which was really interesting. I was thinking back to what you're saying about yourself personally as well, and that fostering those personal connections. And it seems that that's coming across into either it's come across or it's feeding into what's going on in your personal life. Actually, there is a value in having expertise in something, but you need others with there.
Yeah, you always need others. That's what's the trite saying. It's if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go with others. To be fair, I'm going to drag back to that wolf run. One of our team members wanted to set a personal best. So there was 10 of us. He went off in front of the rest of us and set a personal best. I think it got it done in an hour and a half time. We took our time and we got our money's worth, but we had a lot more fun, I think, than this individual did. And I think we certainly had more fun. I think we probably got more muddy. Did we go further? No, because it was a race that was 10 kilometers. We couldn't go further, but we did really, enjoy every obstacle. Some so much that some of the people went through a few obstacles twice because they really enjoyed it that much.
But that's a really important thing, though, isn't it? Is having people that have the same alignment. Is that one person obviously wanted to go for them? Their enjoyment was challenging themselves and getting there as quick as they could.
Yeah, and we didn't make them stay with us. We were like, go do that challenge. We'll celebrate that with you at the end. This is what's driving you to do this run. We just want to get round, and that's that acceptance too, and that's great. You need to understand what's driving each individual at a person time and point them towards a common goal.
Nice. Okay. So if that success is built with these remote teams by bringing people together, how do you face the challenge of sort of setbacks and when things aren't going to plan? What is it that you have to do differently with these remote teams that you possibly may have done with an in-person team?
So you need to get that trust back. You need to find out what's going wrong, and you need to diagnose. So that's something is going wrong. So when I joined the Australian company that I most recently worked for, their customer support was not great. The team had suffered from COVID. From the pandemic lockdown. I'm not saying that they were suffering from COVID, but they were not in the habit of working together. and were not in the habit of really understanding the underlying processes, which is also important. They didn't have the knowledge, and they didn't have, communication standards for dealing with customers. So they were sorry for a lot of stuff, but not positioned to fix things. And customers get sick of hearing sorry from a support team. They want solutions. So there's a few things that I did with that team initially. Absolutely. They were working in a hybrid sort of manner. I thought they were fully remote on that, but in this circumstance, because I needed to turn that team around quickly, and I was the furthest from London, I took it upon myself to go into London and work from the office a couple of days a week. And when I went into London to work from the office those days, they were encouraged to come with me. And what we did was we made sure that those days had team building events. We made sure that those days were specifically designed to workshop through problems that we had and solve them and share knowledge and things like that. And then organically, what seemed to happen is that we would all go out for lunch and end up all sitting around a table with everybody together and just share experience and getting to know each other, which was lovely. And people started looking forward to having those team lunches. It wasn't mandated. I mean, if you wanted to go out and see a friend or, wanted something to work on or whatever, go ahead and do that. But it just organically happened that people thought this was great. Let's set aside the time and sit down and have a chat, which was beautiful. If you can't do that in person, and the reason I did do that in person is because we had a bit of a time limit. We needed to get that support turned around quickly. We also needed to scale the team and grow and get those processes in place to do that. It can be done remotely. In doing so, you need to absolutely have the workshops, but also design in time to celebrate, things to celebrate with, rewards, things along those lines, I think. Some kind of challenges, some kind of chit chat, some crack. Schedule in some crack. That's a great word from Ireland. Schedule in some fun for everybody, because all work and no play is just dire.
Yeah, no, it does. It definitely, when it's about work and the only thing that goes right or wrong is work, that's when work, it's not fun, is it? It's when it actually becomes a chore and not to be looked forward to.
Yeah. The other thing that I did consciously as a leader, and always do consciously as a leader, is I have a weekly one-on-one with my direct reports. And I honor that. So it's their time. They get to set the topic. I do my absolute utmost not to reschedule those one-on-ones with them. And sometimes that you need to do so. But those one-on-ones, I can check in on their work. I can check in on how they are doing and what their family is doing and what's going on in their lives, what their aspirations are for careers, talk about some of the challenges that they might be having, whether it's professional or skill related or emotionally related, emotional IQ and that kind of perspective. But that's a one-on-one is so incredibly valuable, both as a leader and as a participant in those one-on-ones, that they're great. And
and that it's really coming through, like that power of connection and people.
Huge. The other thing about people and connection is I deliberately try to not build an echo chamber around myself. So my general rule for hiring people is that if you are hiring a person who looks like you and sounds like you and thinks like you, you've just built yourself an echo chamber. You're not going to get any new ideas from that. So I always try to get people who come from maybe different cultures and class. That's sounding like me, potentially working like me. It's different. I like to work with people who don't think like me. So if you've got people who are neurodivergent, you've got really interesting approaches to things. Your skills need to fit your job, but do that. And you don't want to work with people who look like you. You don't want to have a room full of guys who all look the same, or look. It's boring, and you're not going to get good outcomes from that. So A couple of examples. Crash test dummies up until about 2011 were designed specifically for men. And what that meant is that there were higher injury rates for women in real crashes because women are smaller.
Mm.
And that you didn't have a woman on the design team saying, hey, why are all of these crash test dummies of this specific size? So that needed to change, and getting that kind of diverse perspective in product development, it's critical.
Mm.
Tesco had a Ramadan campaign a few years ago. Absolutely brilliant. Ramadan, most holy month in the Muslim calendar. What they did, though, is that they had a Ramadan special offer, put the shelf up front, and put a bunch of products that were non-halal on that shelf. So they might be on discount, but no Muslim was able to eat them.
No.
And I can tell you, I can probably guarantee that there was nobody who had that cultural awareness sitting on that product or promotions team. So that really absolutely hit the mark, and then caused a big PR mishap. And that's where diversity and different thinking and different experience comes in, because you get better product, you get different sort of empathy. The people who work with people who are different learn that people think differently and act differently. It goes back to that connection point I was making. Understand different cultures and different approaches.
Yeah, it's massive. It's massive. And like thinking like big picture across organizations, because that's where you've lots of experience as well. How do you challenge that habit in others? Because there is a safety in that, isn't there? And if you can come in and you see that there's that homogenous group of people that are all the same, how do you start?
I like to call it out. I do recall sitting down at a board meeting when I was working on my company's Women in Payments focus group, which I did. I sat on the steering committee of it. We had a board meeting to present what we were doing to the board of the company. And somebody challenged me and said, well, what would you like to see Women in Payments achieve? And I looked around the table, and I believe there were 20 people at that table on the board, including some of the executive from the company. And there were 3 women. And I said, well, ideally, half of the people here should be women. Or people who are diverse, should embrace diversity. And that did cause some pushback, but you need to call it out. I had an opportunity to call something out, a lack of diversity at the highest level of my company, so I did.
Mm.
And you need to continue to have that kind of voice from that kind. And you need to be. I had trust in that company. I had that psychological safety at that company. I am pretty brave and outspoken anyway, but I felt that I was able to do that there. Other companies, not. When I was interviewing for jobs, I do specifically look out for companies that share with the values that I have and have that kind of value and recognize the value that comes from bringing in diverse perspectives. So I try to work on those. There's other companies and organizations that will understand it and potentially pay lip service for it, but without a really strong focused effort from the leadership, they're not going to change, and it's difficult. It's, if it was easy, I wouldn't be talking about diversity in 2024.
Yeah, and I find that the challenge isn't actually in that meeting. It's the work that you do before that meeting to get the right people in the room, and even people like myself that are white males to actually be really aware of the power, the challenge we have if we're in that room to then vouch for, push that diversity. And like this is always in my mind, is that I want to be in those rooms because I want to bring in that, but then I'm also aware that I'm another person who just can perpetuate it. So how do I balance that personal ambition with actually, no, I'm going to go down, I'm going to do good. And it's always that dichotomy of I'm here, I'm going to champion the causes.
It's tough. It's tough. It's multifaceted. I would say, take my rule. Don't hire somebody who looks like you and thinks like you and sounds like you. That's easy. The other rule is if you can't find candidates that fit that, go out and ask for those candidates. And it's really, really tough. I wanted to hire a female project manager who had expertise in credit card payments at a certain level. And I said this to the recruiter I worked with, who works specifically and is an absolute champion of increasing women's inclusivity in financial technology. And she struggled to find me female project managers who had that skill set at the level I was looking for. Yeah. So what do you do then? Do you go out and start educating and start teaching? It's not easy. You have to go from the ground up. You have to encourage women into STEM. You have to encourage other cultures, other diverse candidates into STEM, and really start there. And there's a lot of initiatives to do that. So if you've got a company that can support those efforts. But I would say that hiring rule: don't hire somebody who looks like you and sounds like you and thinks like you. That's where you start. Yeah.
Love it. Okay, we're up top. I've got a couple more questions, but we are almost out of time. I've enjoyed this conversation, and I could go on for ages. But I've got some quick fire questions for you to finish off, if that's okay, and then we will wrap up and say our bye.
Absolutely.
So, 4 questions. Question number 1: how do you deal with difficult stakeholders?
I listen, I communicate, I find out why they're being difficult. And then I look for the root cause and try and resource it from there, or resolve it from there.
Love it. You've got a tight deadline. What's your go-to habit to get there?
It depends is a good one. I realize it's a quick fire question. There's not a quick fire answer, and you're going to get a project manager's answer. Sometimes you can't throw more people at it. If you put 2 women on the job, you're not going to deliver a baby faster than 9 months. You need to put a solution in that resolves the problem.
Nice. Love it. Okay. How do you celebrate major milestones?
I like to have a parade and a big party and success and shout out. That's my preference. That might not be yours.
I want to celebration.
Yeah. You might want to reward people and celebrate with people in a way that fits it. But a big party is always nice.
Nice. Cool. What book should I read?
What book should you read? The one I really enjoy right now is Co-Intelligence by Ethan Mollick. It's a book. It's subtitled Living and Working with AI. And it's got the 4 rules of working with AI right now. I work with ChatGPT on a daily basis, just to iterate on problems and to work through things. And I think that AI isn't going away. Generative AI is improving almost daily, and we need to embrace it and learn how to use it to make our jobs better and our lives better. Yeah.
Love it. Last question. What's your go-to habit to shut that laptop on time so you can then spend the time doing the things you love?
It's quite easy. I just don't walk my dog, and he comes and gets me at 5 o'clock.
Nice. I love it. That's brilliant. One final question. Any words of wisdom for anyone who's on their journey through the world of operations leadership?
Words of wisdom, I would say, in what I've learned in over 20 years of international operations leadership, is when you think you've communicated too much, communicate some more.
Nice.
Also, I've taken a leap now from working in large companies. If you're struggling with your communication, I can help businesses and leaders optimize with this. So if you're struggling to get things done, give me a call. I'd love to chat with you.
Yeah, no, I think you are. There is a whole wealth of how to communicate that I've taken from you today. So thank you so much. If people need to find you, what's the best place to find you? Where is the best place to find you?
You can find me on LinkedIn, Michelle Johnson. Unfortunately, that's not really a diverse name. There's lots of us out there. You can also find me at my website, which is www.squirrel9.com. And that's the little red nimble creature that likes to run up and down trees. So that's Squirrel9 is where you can find me.
Amazing. Thank you very much. And thank you for those watching this and have come on this conversation with us today. If you want more of this, there are more videos to watch in the playlist. And there's another playlist on 5 Habits of which conversations. I talk to experts in their field where we think about 5 habits that make you really succeed in what they do. That's it. Thank you very much. Don't forget to subscribe to the newsletter. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful